Joining us right now to talk about it is Shehzad Qazi. He is China Beige Book's managing director. And Shehzad, we knew the Chinese economy was not great, but it looks like there was a deceleration even as we headed into this last month.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of the gains from the stimulus announcements that you got in September and then some of the pulling forward of growth, really what it was, trade-in programs and such, the benefits from that have clearly expired. This is once again a case of, can Beijing actually lift business confidence and consumer sentiment? Because these short-term measures are just not going to cut it.
Okay, let's talk through the numbers, and then we can talk a little bit more about what you think will happen next. But first of all, if you're looking at growth, revenue growth was down month over month. What happened?
Yeah, look, firms are saying that, they had a pretty spectacular November, and by comparison to that, they just didn't do as well. Year over year, it's looking okay in terms of profitability and such, but it's not a phenomenal story there either.
New orders, that was maybe the biggest thing that jumped out at me. New orders slowing down pretty substantially just for manufacturing output. Yeah,
absolutely. I think especially if you look at orders directly from the U.S., they're in contraction territory now. I think there was this big freak out over the fact that, you're going to get a lot of tariffs. And so a lot of the buildup of inventory and advance ordering took place. Again, even there, you're seeing some of the benefits expire, which, of course, creates a big question mark looking ahead. Because some of those, big export figures that China was benefiting off of this year may not necessarily be in place, especially as we get into early 2025.
Now, you've said in this report that the one thing that could save that is if the threats of tariffs coming from incoming President Trump are just hot air. But is the damage already done? I mean, once you move orders, once U.S. companies are looking elsewhere for production, even if it turns out not to materialize as had been anticipated, maybe the damage is done.
To a certain extent, the damage certainly is done, right? If you think big picture, moving of supply chains here and there. But the next question, of course, is if you've already ordered up a bunch of stuff, now maybe if the tariff threat isn't materializing again as you get into early 2025, you think about maybe restocking. Again, now we'll see how companies are making those decisions. But the larger idea is if you want to get supply chains out of China, the threats themselves have been big enough. You've heard some of the major, producers come out and say, look, we're thinking of, more than China plus one. We're moving factories out and so forth.
So why wouldn't China get religion and see that this is the future if we try to retaliate? And this is what happens when, we haven't even retaliated yet. I mean, they mainline the U.S. economy. China has made some progress becoming a consumer society, but it's still an export country, isn't it? How can they possibly... Yeah. They
need to do it with a way to save face, right?
They got to save face, but I don't think they have a lot of leverage. Do they have a lot of leverage?
They don't have a lot of leverage, but at the same time, I think a lot of the attitude coming out can be summarized as bring it on, right?
How is that possible? Because they keep making this stuff, and they don't have consumers to use all of it, and they got to dump it. And if we don't let them dump it, then, sooner or later, it just seems like something's going to pop.
It'll depend on how aggressive we get, right? Are we going to go after transshipment?
It seems like it's in everybody's best interest to make nice.
Well, yeah, and what they're going to say is, all right, we can't ship directly to you. We'll do it from Vietnam. We'll do it from Mexico. We'll do it from here and there. You turn into this cat and mouse game, and they have not an infinite capacity, but they have a lot of capacity to take pain and still be able to sell, still be able to subsidize companies at home, provide them cheap credit, zero interest rate
Do they
loans.
care if they're...